Hi, welcome to my video. Today we're going to talk about how to apply for a tax ID number, also known as an EIN. The first step is to go online and to search for apply for EIN. And the one thing that you're going to want to make sure of is that the URL, that's to say the web address, is an irs.gov web address. If you're at the right place, the web page should look like this, and you're going to click on Apply Online Now. That page is going to bring you to this one. It just has some generic information about applying for a tax ID number, and you can just click on Begin Application. On this page, you're going to want to select the type of entity that you are, whether you are a sole proprietor, partnership, a corporation, an LLC, an estate, or a trust. I am going to go over a couple of the follow-up questions for partnerships, corporations, and LLCs. For now, I'm going to bypass estates and trusts, and then later on, I will go through almost to the end of the application for a sole proprietorship, and that way you can see what all the steps are. The first selection is for partnerships. In this case, a partnership refers to a partnership that's basically on a handshake. You may or may not have an operating agreement, but you're not an LLC either. And a joint venture is something that's more intricate beyond the scope of this video. But those are the two choices under partnership. Second screen under partnership is just some basic information about partnerships, and you can just click on continue. Here we see the choices for corporations. You can see that there's a number of different types of corporations. The two most common are going to be corporation, which refers to a C Corp, and the S Corp, which is a corporation that is going to elect to be treated as an S Corp. There are other different types of corporations, such as a personal service corporation, a REIT, a regulated investment conduit, and a settlement fund. If you're watching this video, you are probably one of the first three. Again, we could just see some general information about applying for a tax ID number for a corporation. You could just hit continue. Next, we have an LLC, or a limited liability company. This is sort of the Swiss Army knife of business entities. The default treatment of an LLC is either a Schedule C or a partnership tax return, but it is an eligible entity, so an LLC can elect to be treated the same as a C Corp, and it can also elect to be treated as an S Corp. You do have to be organized with your Secretary of State and basically incorporate as an LLC in order to have this tax treatment. And then you can hit continue. This screen under LLCs is here because they want to know how many members there are in the LLC. As I said before, the default treatment is either as a Schedule C or a partnership. So if you have a single member LLC, it is considered a disregarded entity by the IRS, and they want you to file a Schedule C. If you have more than one member, then you are a partnership filing, so you file Form 1065. And in both cases, you can still elect to be treated ultimately as a C Corp or an S Corp, but this is trying to determine what the default treatment is. And the next screen here, it gives you those two options. It says that if you want to get treated as a corporation, you file Form 8832, and if you want to be treated as an S Corp, you file Form 2553. You could just hit continue here though. I'm going to go back to the original screen, and like I said before, we are going to continue with the whole application as a sole proprietor, just because it's a little bit easier to demonstrate all the different types of businesses. So I have selected sole proprietor, and we're going to hit continue. The first screen that comes up is it wants us to determine whether we are a sole proprietor or a household employer. If you are starting a business, you are a sole proprietor. A household employer is if you have a nanny or something like that, and somebody works out of your house. It's not really a business. It's just that you hire somebody personally to do a bunch of work for you. The next screen that comes up is just a generic screen about being a sole proprietor. The one thing that I would like to note here before we hit continue is that the IRS only wants you to have one tax ID number per taxpayer. If you're going to have multiple businesses as a sole proprietor, you would be able to use the same tax ID number for both. The next step is to tell the IRS why you want a tax ID number. In our case, we're going to select started a new business. There are a couple of other options such as hired employees, banking purposes, change the type of organization, or purchased a business. in our case, we're just going to stick with started a new business. This is a simple one. You're going to enter your name and social security number, then hit continue. Next, you're going to enter your address and phone number. Here's a hint, is use all capital letters, and you're going to abbreviate the street to ST, avenue to AVE, etc. And I'll show you why in a moment. The reason that you're going to do all caps and that you're going to abbreviate the type of street that you're in is because the IRS has a database version of your address, and I typically recommend that people accept the database version because the IRS processes hundreds of millions of tax returns and we don't want to confuse them. So just stick with the database version. This next screen, you're going to enter any DBAs. So if you have a business name that you'd like to use, you can enter it here. And you also are going to type in the date that you started the business. The county and the state should be pre-populated based on the zip code that you typed in for your address. This next screen, the IRS wants to know whether we're involved in certain types of business activities. That includes big trucks, gambling, tanning salons, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Those are the first four. Those aren't as common as the last one. The last one is the most common, and that's whether you're going to have payroll or not. Because if you do run a payroll, you have to file your payroll forms every quarter, and they're going to want to know whether those are due. This next screen is all about the trade or industry that you're in. And I'm going to go through and click through all of the follow-up questions for each of these businesses. And this is important because you want to get this piece right because it impacts the income and expense ratios that the IRS would be looking for. So if you have the wrong setup, then your income and expenses may be off compared to other businesses like yours, and it increases your audit risk. And the second is it may dictate whether you are qualified to take a qualified business income deduction. Here are the follow-up subcategories for accommodations. Here is the subcategory for construction. You basically just type this one in. Here are all the subcategories under finance. And here we see food service, healthcare, insurance, manufacturing. Here we have the sub-choices for real estate. This can include house renters, house flippers, realtors, and real estate managers. Rental and leasing includes rentals that are not real estate. So think of a rental car company, but there is overlap between this and real estate rentals. The next category is retail, and I thought I would mention here that at the federal side, there's not that much going on, but on the state side, there is a whole lot going on, and this is because of sales tax. So if you have a lot of activity in a particular state or nexus, then you may have to file, collect, and pay sales tax, and that is a fiduciary tax, so it is not a tax that you want to trifle with. The next category here is social assistance. This is transportation. This would include people who are working for Uber or Lyft. And we have wholesale. Finally, we have other. You can see the different subcategories under other. Finally, you've gone through all the different choices and you are able to get your tax ID or EIN confirmation letter. You can either receive it online or wait for it in the mail. You will have one more opportunity after this screen to verify all of your information, but this is as far as I will go with the video because I'm not actually applying for a tax ID number at this time, but I will show you what to do next. Here's a sample EIN letter that the IRS would generate when it assigns a tax ID number to you. This should be part of your permanent record. Make multiple copies. You'll probably need a copy of this to set up a bank account. And the other thing that I would like to note is in that middle section, it tells you the forms that the IRS is expecting you to file. So in this example, it is a C Corp that has a payroll, but each one would be different based on the answer that you selected. Finally, now that you're out in the real world doing business, many places are going to ask you to fill out Form W-9. This is for their reference so that they can issue you a 1099. So for example, if you go to Square so that they can swipe credit cards for you, they're going to ask you to fill out W-9, probably on their online portal. And this is where you're going to tell them your name, your DBA, your address, and you're going to use your tax ID number. But you also have to reference the type of entity that you selected when you went through the EIN selection process. That concludes our video. Thanks for listening. See our contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thanks.